The next thing I want to talk about, I want to spend some time on this because this is a really big deal. Effort tracking and reporting. And why is this a big deal? I have a couple of examples to show you. It's a big deal because it can cost the university millions of dollars if it's not done properly. So here's an example. Harvard settles federal grant overcharge allegations for $1.3 million. And this is because the Department of Justice went out on behalf of the NIH and contended that public health professor emerita misreported the time and effort spent on grants from the National Institutes of Health, overcharging by $1.3 million. Now, the professor said she did not do anything wrong. But here's what the government said. The government alleged Spiegelman and her team inappropriately charged their time and effort by evenly distributing their time across all grants for which they provided statistical support without accurately accounting for the time they actually spent on particular grants. So instead of saying this project I was doing 5%, this project I was doing 20, this one 30, they said just spread it across 10% across all of them. And the Department of Justice said that this is not accurate. This is when they looked at the different projects, it didn't make sense to them. So Harvard had to pay that money back. I'm going to give you another example. This one was for 10 million. Scripps Research Institute to pay 10 million for improper use of NIH grants. This is a whistleblower, by the way. The whistleblower got $1.75 million for reporting this, which I thought was fascinating. So settled claims that they improperly charged NIH-funded research grants for time spent by researchers on non-grant related activities. So the money was allegedly used for writing new grant applications. That is never an allowable expense on an NIH grant. And we will talk about how the School of Medicine has a policy, I think we've mentioned in a previous session, where 5% of a PI's effort must always be reserved for grant writing, for administration, for other responsibilities. It's for exactly this reason. Nobody can be paid 100% on grants. If they're writing grants, there must be some time reserved that is not charged to grants. They also said the money was allegedly used for teaching and other administrative activities. So just a couple of examples of universities falling afoul of these rules. It's a big deal. We want to take it seriously. So we have a lot of resources in here. Here's a summary. The big one is these are projects, not accounting funds. And that's something that is really, really important to remember. We're not balancing to a dollar amount. We are talking about how much time is the researcher and are the personnel devoting to that particular project. So these are best practices coming from RMG compliance. Charge effort on sponsored projects consistently and at a level of effort as close to the original commitment as possible. For example, if a faculty member is listed at 5% over 5 months, enter, maybe you're at the end of that, enter the LDAs to spread it over the 5-month period. Do not put 25% in the final month. It may be the same dollar amount, but it is not an accurate reflection of the effort devoted. And you can confirm the effort by reviewing the notice of award and the approved budget in SARA. And if there's no revised budget with the notice of award, then you go back to the funded proposal budget. Next thing you do is you want to create and maintain that salary over the cap spreadsheet. Every faculty manage, even if they don't have grants right now, they could get one. Ensure the PI reserves the minimum of 5%, which we talk about, and that has to be on a non-sponsored PTA. Confirm that the effort is accurate at the following times, at least quarterly as part of the e-certification. If you've maintained that labor effort distribution report, it's just a matter of sending it to the PI, just an update on how your effort is charging. If you have questions or concerns or you want to make adjustments, let me know. Anytime a new award is made, like we just talked about, and anytime the PI indicates, and sometimes they'll email you and say, actually, I need to change this, let's do something different. And then, you know, of course, we'll take care of that. Ensure the PI does not have a gap in effort of 3 months or more without prior sponsor approval. There's information on that in the Do Research faculty effort policy. Set up an early PTA, we talked about that. And even if you're awaiting IRB approval, see if non-human subjects work can begin so that effort can be charged. If the PI is working on getting things ramped up, then we should be charging. If a PTA is set up late, confirm with the PI when the work began and then submit LDAs to go back as originally committed going back to the start date. If it's more than 6 months in the past, you're going to have to set up a PI effort cost share account. That's another type of central office request. And then you charge the PI effort to that cost share. It's going to have to be paid by university funds. If an award goes into no cost extension, extend the PTA end date so the faculty member can continue to charge effort as PI using that early extend PTA. And for NIH awards going into no cost extension without automatic carry forward, such as UO1 or P30. So RMG compliance, financial compliance will actually initiate an early PTA request on your behalf. They usually do that about 2 months before the end date. You can always check in with them and ask them if they haven't done it yet, and if they need you to do an early PTA, but usually for without automatic carry forward, they will take care of that. Tracking effort, these are the things we've talked about: labor effort distribution worksheet, maintain the other support document in NIH format, update it when the PI effort changes, and then make sure when you're calculating the effort, just hopefully you know this, but when you're calculating effort to include on the progress report, it's all charges, both direct and over the cap. That's total effort. So when changes occur, notify RMG if the PI or any key personnel named on that notice of award will reduce time by 25% or more. That's an NIH requirement. And then for non-federal sponsors, contact RMG to notify them of a reduction in effort and determine if it's needed or not. So there's a lot of information on faculty effort and FAQs on the Do Research website. I've got here some additional reference information. One thing I wanted to point out is key personnel effort during the no cost extension period. You can actually reduce unless it's a K award or some award that has a specific effort requirement. NIH will not require prior approval for the reduction in effort for senior key personnel in the no cost extension period. The recipient is reminded that active awards must have a measurable level of effort. So if they're named in the notice of award, they can't go to 0 without prior approval, but they can go down to something small like 1%. There's also some FAQs in here about PI effort on clinical trials. The really big takeaway here, and of course refer back if you're working on a clinical trial, industry sponsored, the PI effort is dependent on patient enrollment. And so you may see gaps where there's no patient enrollment, in which case it would not be appropriate to charge PI effort. But if it's NIH funded, it must still follow the NIH guidelines. So if the faculty member is designated as key, any reduction requires prior approval. So always read the notice of award carefully. This also applies to subawards from prime NIH funded clinical trials. We have those a lot here where there'll be one site and then prime site and then Stanford will be subbed. It's the same thing. If there is a committed level of effort, we have to maintain that or within 25% or get prior approval. There is information here on, sometimes a PA will say, do I have to put effort? Can I just, not charge it? It says right here, School of Medicine policy, all faculty participating on sponsored projects must devote effort and budget for that effort. They go into really, really loving detail on this. They really, really are committed. You must charge effort for what time you are devoting to sponsored projects. So there's a lot of information here. And basically it says, if you have questions or concerns about this policy, go straight to Kathleen Thompson, the head of RMG, because that's who you're going to have to convince if you want to do something different from this policy. So there, I've got the person months conversion chart. If you're wondering about, I think we looked at this. I've saved this one a couple places because it's really handy. How am I calculating effort? Am I compliant? That's all here. And then there's a process that the RAC, our group uses to review PI effort, and all the details of how we do that are back in here. If you're interested, you can always contact one of us. If you need to do a PI effort review for one of your own investigators, let us know. We'll be happy to help you. So, okay, so that's PI effort, a lot there. Let's go to another exercise. In class exercise number 2, you prepare a labor effort distribution report for a PI showing effort charged at the same levels she committed in the sponsor approved budgets, 10% on an R21, 20% on an R01, and 30% on a P30. The PI confirmed these effort levels during project setup. You would have sent the budget and said is 10% or whatever still accurate. She said yes. However, the PI now says that effort should be charged at 20% each. She asks you to update her labor schedule and submit LDAs to reflect this. Type the number of your response into the Zoom chat box. Would you 1, submit the LDAs as she has requested, 2, discuss the effort compliance and prior approval requirements, or 3, do not submit the LDAs. The PI's statement of effort is incorrect. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of right answers here. Yes. Thank you, everybody. You would be surprised the number of people who do number one, they just submit the LDAs. That would not be accurate. Yes, the answer is number two. And it's really important because RMG Compliance has talked with us about this too, that sometimes people will just submit the LDAs, just whatever the PI says, they'll just do it. Other people will argue with the PI and say, no, you budgeted 30%, you have to charge 30%. Well, that's not accurate either. If the PI is telling you that they have reduced their effort on this project, then that's going to open up a discussion of, okay, how much have you reduced? If it's more than 25%, then we'll need to do the prior approval request. And so let's talk about that. Who's going to make sure that the scope of work is unchanged, right? How are we carrying forward the work? And PIs have done this successfully, and they describe collaborators and people in the lab who are carrying forward the work, and that they feel confident they can do it with the reduced effort. So you can do it. You just want to make sure the PI understands all the implications. And of course, we saw in that example, those two examples at Harvard and Scripps, that you can't just spread 20% across. You've got 1 2-year exploratory award here, a medium-sized research project, and a massive programmatic grant. And it's not likely that the PI is spending the exact same amount on all of those awards.